Magic Treehouse, Time of the Turtle King. Written by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5. Time for Tortoises. Jack wanted to ask Carmen about the emergency, but the tourists immediately started asking questions. "Excuse me, do we have to pay? Do you have a bathroom here? We brought boxed lunches. Where can we eat at lunchtime?" "I'll answer all your questions in a minute," Carmen assured them. "But first, I need to speak to our special guests." She turned back to Jack and Annie. "As I was saying, our director isn't here because of a crisis. I want to show you around the center, but I need to make some calls first." "Carmen, don't worry about us," Annie said firmly. "How can we help you?" "Goodness, you're so kind. Could you—" Carmen looked at the noisy tourists. "Could you give them information about the center and the tortoises, please?" "Of course," said Annie. "We can handle that." "No problem," said Jack. "Oh, thank you," said Carmen. She pointed to the map on the wall. "That shows you the layout of our center. Perhaps you can lead them around while I deal with this crisis." "Could you tell us about the crisis?" Jack asked, trying to sound like an expert. "Yes," said Carmen. "The Park Service called about more endangered turtles and—" Miss, a man interrupted Carmen. "Can you just tell all of us how to find the tortoises?" "No, I can't tell you. I need to show you," said Carmen, sounding upset. "Sorry." She seemed flustered. "Jack, Annie, could you please—" "Go ahead, Carmen. We got this," said Annie. "Make your calls," said Jack. "Oh, you're lifesavers. Thank you," said Carmen. And she slipped into a back room. "I'll look at the map," Jack said to Annie. "You get their attention." He hurried over to the map on the wall. "Greetings, friends," Annie called out. No one seemed to hear her. Noise from the chattering tourists filled the lobby. "Greetings, friends," Jack shouted. He pointed at his badge for all to see. The tourists looked startled. A couple of them loudly shushed the others. "Shh, shh." "Thank you," said Annie, "and welcome to the Giant Tortoise Center. I'm Annie, and that's my brother Jack." She pointed at Jack, studying the map. "We are your world turtle experts today." People spoke softly to each other. "World turtle experts? That's a big deal. I'm so impressed." Jack returned to Annie's side. "First, there are some rules to follow," he said to the group. "Rule number 1. Please do not talk or laugh loudly. Our tortoise friends prefer peaceful surroundings. Rule 2. Please do not touch any tortoises," said Annie. And Rule 3. Please don't take photos of them. This is their home and we are their guests. Everyone nodded meekly. "Thank you for your cooperation," said Jack. "Okay, now follow us." Jack and Annie led the tourists out of the lobby and down a hall. They stopped in front of a closed door. "Let's pause for a moment," Jack said. "We're about to enter an area with many giant tortoises." The group murmured with excitement. "But none of these tortoises are really giant yet," said Annie. "You are about to meet many tiny turtle babies and little turtle kids." "Hatchlings," said Jack. "The name for a baby turtle is hatchling." "Hold on there," said a large bald man. "You say tortoises one moment and turtles the next. Which are they?" "Excellent question," said Jack. "Yes, we world turtle experts get that question a lot," said Annie. "All tortoises are turtles," said Jack. But not all turtles are tortoises. The giant tortoises of the Galapagos are the largest members of the turtle family. Think of them as the kings and queens of the turtle world, said Annie. Oh, I love giant tortoises, said a woman in a sun hat. Me too, said Annie. And the Galapagos Islands need them, said Jack. Tortoises are vital to the ecosystem here, and can you explain that? Interrupted the large man. Sure. An ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms in their physical environment, Jack explained. No one said anything. They all looked confused. Annie stepped in. Jack means that everything on this island is connected. Tortoises, trees, other plants, insects, all work together. If you destroy one of them, you harm the others. Understand? The tourists nodded with serious looks. A few hundred years ago, pirates and whale hunters visited these islands, said Jack. They killed hundreds of thousands of giant tortoises for food. Oh no, I hate that, said a woman with curly red hair. I could cry, said the woman in the sun hat. Me too, said Annie. We all could, said Jack. But fortunately, things have changed. Today, the National Park Service is doing all it can to help the giant tortoises live long, happy lives. Hooray for them! Exclaimed the woman with curly red hair. Mom, quiet, whispered a teenage girl. Yes, hooray for them, said Annie. There are good people everywhere trying to help endangered animals, said Jack. Are you ready? Everyone nodded. Time for tortoises, Annie said. And she opened the door to the outside. Chapter 6. The Worst News. The group followed Jack and Annie into the fenced yard. We'll visit the hatchery first, said Jack. He led everyone to a row of wooden trays covered with screens. Annie removed one of the screens. Oh, wow, she said. Annie, said Jack. Sorry, she whispered. She lowered her voice. Everyone, please step closer and have a good look. The tourists moved forward. They murmured with excitement. The tray was filled with eggs the size of tennis balls. Tiny tortoises crawled among some of the eggs. Jack picked up an egg. Park Service workers collect tortoise eggs in the wild, he said. They bring them here to keep them safe. Annie lifted a tiny tortoise from the tray. She set it in the palm of her hand. A newly hatched giant, she said. Aw, I could die, said the red-haired woman. Me too, said Annie. This tiny baby is only 3 inches long and weighs only a few ounces. But get this, it will grow to be 1,000 times bigger. As an adult, it could easily weigh more than 500 pounds. The group gasped. Some baby, laughed an old man. I know, it's a miracle, isn't it? Said Annie. The tiny tortoise stretched out its neck and turned its head. It looks positively ancient, said the red-haired woman. In a way, it is, said Jack. Giant tortoises have lived on the Galapagos for 2 or 3 million years. Good luck, sweetie, Annie said softly to the tiny tortoise. Have a nice life. And she carefully returned the hatchling to the tray. So, when that hatchling is older, it will be moved over here, said Jack. He led the group to an open pen. The tourists gasped with wonder. Hundreds of small tortoises were crawling around in grass and dirt. Some were munching green stalks. Others were climbing rocks or soaking in pools of water. The tourists whispered and smiled. "Do they have any brains?" the old man asked. "You mean, are they smart?" said Annie. "Yes, they are," answered Jack. "Tortoises are super smart. They have a different kind of brain power than we have, but they know exactly how to live their lives." "And those lives are really long," said Annie. "Tortoises can live for more than 150 years. "Whoa," said the old man with a laugh. "What's their secret?" "Another excellent question," said Annie. "Besides having a shell that protects them, their secret is living a quiet, peaceful life. They never hurry. They spend their days resting in the sunlight, eating plants, and soaking in puddles." "Sounds good to me," the old man roared. "I heard tortoises are deaf," the red-haired woman said. "That's not exactly true," said Jack. "They don't hear well, but they can feel vibrations." "How do you know if one is male or female?" asked the woman in the sun hat. "When it's fully grown, you can tell by its belly," said Jack. "If the belly curves inward, it's a male. Now, Annie, why don't you tell our friends about releasing the tortoises into the wild?" "When the tortoises are about 5 years old, they are ready to live on their own," said Annie. "At that age, they're about the size of a melon." "What kind of melon?" the old man asked. Maybe a honeydew?" said Annie. Suddenly, the door to the center opened. Carmen stepped into the yard. "Jack, Annie," she called. "May I have a quick word?" "Excuse us," Jack said to the group. He and Annie rushed over to Carmen. "The Park Service needs your help right away," Carmen said in a hushed voice. "What is it?" said Jack. "Special Forces will explain," said Carmen. "They're waiting outside the front door. You go. I'll take care of the visitors." Carmen hurried to the tortoise pen, and Jack and Annie slipped back into the building. As they headed to the lobby, Jack's heart was pounding. "Special Forces? This must be the emergency Carmen was talking about," he said. "I wonder what is going on." "I don't know," said Annie. "But it can't be good." When they went out the front door of the center, Jack and Annie saw 2 strong-looking men standing near a white pickup truck. Their backs were toward Jack and Annie. They were dressed in green military uniforms. "Point to your badge," Annie said to Jack. "Right," said Jack. Pointing to their World Turtle Expert badges, Jack and Annie headed over to the soldiers. "Excuse us, gentlemen," said Annie. Both soldiers turned around. When they saw the badges, they both saluted Jack and Annie. "Very glad you're here, Jack and Annie. I'm Captain Cruz," said one of the men. "Captain Pinto," said the other. "Ecuadorian Special Forces." "What's up, Captain?" Jack asked calmly. "Rescue mission on Blue Hill Volcano," said Pinto. "National Park Services asked for our help. All giant tortoises are being cleared from a small area of the volcano," Cruz said. "A fiery river of molten lava is heading their way." "Oh dear," said Annie. "We assume you're familiar with this sort of tortoise rescue mission," Cruz said. "Yes, sir, no problem," said Annie. Jack barely nodded. As a world turtle expert, he knew all about tortoises, but nothing about how to deal with fiery rivers of molten lava. "Good, let's go," said Cruz. "On it," said Annie. She followed Pinto and Cruz to yet another white pickup truck. She looked back. "Jack?" Jack took a deep breath. "Yep, on it," he murmured. And he hurried after Annie and the soldiers.